Well, I want to welcome everybody. My name is John Tare, and I'm President and CEO of the Boulder Chamber. And I welcome all of you to this Boulder County Commissioner's Candidate Forum. And I will just compliment you on your engagement. Most people associate election season with November timeframe, but as you know, we have a very important primary coming up that is going to be ending on June 30. And I know many of you are still holding on to your ballots, waiting to make your decisions. And so we are proud to have this forum here. And we note that we think that this is the first forum with all 5 of our Boulder County Commissioner candidates engaged. And that's something that for us is very important because we understand that this is a diverse set of candidates that we have, and we want to make sure that you have the opportunity to hear from all of them and their positions. I also want to thank the candidates for joining us and for their participation in our election process. Public service is a great investment, and it starts with running for office, and we know you all have made a great commitment to public service just by putting yourself out there for this election. So I thank all of you. And then just as we get started, I want to acknowledge that you are going to be participating in a conversation about regional issues that are important, not just to the Boulder Chamber, but to the broad spectrum of the Boulder County business community that the Boulder Chamber has the opportunity to collaborate with. And many times we have the opportunity to participate and work together with county leadership in the business community from our fellow chamber members. And I note that we have representation from some of our chamber partners from the Latino Chamber, the Superior Chamber, across the board. And they will be here listening as well as many of their constituent businesses. And the issues that we'll be asking you to address are those issues that reflect that broad spectrum. So that's all I really have to say other than to welcome you again to this debate. I appreciate your attention and focus on our economy, obviously, additional attention and concern about it during this COVID-19 crisis. So your attention matters to us. So thank you for being here, and I'm going to pass it on to Lori Call, who is our Senior Director for Policy Programs at the Boulder Chamber, and she's going to walk us through the ground rules and the format for today's conversation. Take it away, Lori.
Thanks, John. Well, we have a lot to cover today. To ensure that everyone has an equal chance to speak, we have established strict time limits for each candidate's comments. So each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to the questions they receive. This will allow us to cover a variety of topics and ensure our audience has time to ask questions. The Boulder Chamber moderators will note when a candidate has 15 seconds left in their response time. Each candidate will be asked questions based on issues identified by the Boulder Chamber and our partners. And the audience can also offer questions using the chat function of this webinar. We will be monitoring the chat function and will ask those questions as time permits. Because of time constraints, we may not be able to ask all of them, but we plan to select one audience question for each candidate. Regarding the chat function, please don't promote or disparage any candidates. Our goal with this forum is to inform Boulder County residents on the candidates' perspectives so they can vote accordingly. This should be a civil discourse based on respect, and Chamber staff will monitor the chat to ensure questions are appropriate. In addition to this forum, we have a candidate scorecard posted on our website, boulderchamber.com/advocacy. This lists candidate responses to some of the questions you will hear today, and the scorecard also includes campaign websites and how to contact candidates directly. If you want to watch this forum again, you can view it online on the Boulder Chamber's YouTube page. And now to introduce the candidates and to begin the forum, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Andrea Meneghel.
Thank you, Lori, and welcome everybody. I am Andrea Menegel. I am the Director of Public Affairs at the Boulder Chamber. And I will be introducing each of the candidates and then giving each of the issue questions, alternating with my colleague, Maya Cordero. Maya is our Director of Marketing and Events, and you'll meet her as she delivers the first issue question to our candidates. As Lori said, candidates have 1 minute to answer questions. And at that 15-second mark, I am going to hold up this lucky orange bandana that I have that has been protecting me from COVID this whole time, and is a lucky color that will let the candidates know their question and answer is going great. They have a few seconds to wrap it up, and then we'll go into the next question. We will take audience questions, as Lori has mentioned, and then we will hear closing statements from each of the candidates. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the candidates. They will go in alphabetical order by the district they're running. So we will start with Cinda Kochen, go to Clare Levy, and then go to District 2 candidates, James Crowder, Marta Loachamin, and Jonathan Singer. One reminder, and that is that while the candidates are running for specific district seats and have to come from a certain part of Boulder County, the entire county votes for those candidates. So as you watch them, we'll get to know them, get to understand who they are, what they think about the issues, and here we go. So in District 1, from up near the Peak to Peak Highway and a former member of the Daily Camera's editorial board, I would like to introduce Cinda Kochen. Cinda, besides being in love with Boulder County, please let us know a little bit more about yourself and why you are running for County Commissioner.
Well, I think, Andrea, that it's the right time for me. I think I'm the right person. My skill set. I live in I'm closer to a smaller town here in the county, up here near Netherland, and I know how often we feel neglected, and we just kind of laugh about it. Nobody's angry or marching down to the courthouse. But I also know people in other parts of the county that don't feel represented. So I think I'm here at the right time. I think I have the right skill set. I've just started a small business myself, a sustainable business dealing with, believe it or not, shower caps. We have a patent on our shower cap. They're really cool, so check it out. And I have worked with Republicans and Democrats down in the legislature. I have conflict resolution training. I've led groups in that. I've worked with diversity and training on that at Boulder High School and in Boulder Valley. I have had a variety of other successes in life. I've written a book used around the world, teaching babies to swim. And I've had an interesting life, and I think living in this county has enabled me to do all of these things. So I'm very grateful for living here.
Thank you, Cinda. Next, also running in District 1 as Democrat candidate will be Clare Levy. Clare, let us know a little bit more about yourself and why you're running for County Commissioner.
Thank you. Yes, I'd love to. And I want to start by thanking the Chamber for hosting this. It is the first time I think we've all been together, and it's great to have an opportunity to listen to the other candidates. So I'm a 35-year resident of Boulder County. A lot of people know me as a recovering land use attorney. I'm a former member of the state legislature. I'm a retired executive director of a nonprofit organization that was dedicated to policy advocacy on behalf of low-income Coloradans. I've been active throughout the 35 years that I've lived here on many of the big issues that Boulder County has faced over those years, from preserving open space, creating affordable housing, working for smart land use policies, increasing access to human services, green energy, criminal and juvenile justice reform. So I've worked on many of the major issues that I think people in Boulder County are really interested in. The major reason I'm running is to continue the fight against climate change, to increase the availability of affordable housing in Boulder County so we can have a more diverse population and workforce, and to help make Boulder County a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive county.
Thank you, Clare. And those are both of your candidates for District 1. Now we will move on to the candidates for District 2. Starting with the Republican candidate out of Lyons, Colorado is James Crowder. James, introduce yourself and why you're running for Boulder County Commissioner.
Thank you. Well, let me echo Claire's appreciation for the Boulder Chamber hosting this event. I think it's a great way to reach a few people that we might not otherwise have reached. And so I moved to Colorado, to Boulder in 1978 after leaving as the Chief Financial Officer of the Houston-Galveston Area Council of Government. And I've been a small businessman in Boulder County since that time. Lived in Boulder till 2010 when I moved to Lyons. And I'm now on the audit committee with the town of Lyons. So my just keeping my financial chops up, because I think financial administration is a very important piece of county government. I'm running because I've got children and grandkids here, and I want to make sure that Boulder County is able to see the rural nature preserved and that we restore economic vitality to the county through rational public policies. Thank you.
Thank you, James. And next we have Marta Loachamin from Longmont is also running for District 2 as a Democrat candidate, one of 2 Democrats running on the primary for that district. Marta, a little bit about yourself and why are you running for County Commissioner?
Buenas tardes a todos. It's great to be here and get to see everybody together. Like you said, it's the first time. Thank you to the Boulder Chamber and all the partners for bringing us together despite the circumstances. So my name is Marta Loachamin. I am running for District 2, Boulder County Commissioner. And for me, my decision to run in 2018 officially hasn't changed. The urgency and the critical nature of my race has elevated significantly. But that was based on, even then, kind of something that Cindy already touched on, this piece of a lot of folks around the county feeling underrepresented. And for me, the ability for everyday people like myself, teachers, single parents, self-employed business people, to be able to run and lead and be part of, with very unique resumes, the leadership in Boulder County is just one of those pieces. And I do want to just share that there's been some negative conversation about my race here recently as a realtor. And I just want to make sure it's clear out there that I am so proud of being able to help first-time homebuyers, specifically and monolingual Spanish-speaking families for the last 20 years, reach in a small business way the amazing American dream of homeownership. So thanks for having us.
Thank you, Marta. And thank you to all the candidates for trying to stick to that time as well. We know it goes by quick and you're doing great so far. So one more candidate to go, and that is Jonathan Singer, who just ended a stint in our legislature. So Jonathan, also from Longmont, is Democrat running for District 2. Jonathan, why are you running for County Commissioner?
Well, thanks to the Chamber and thanks to everyone for participating, especially James and Marta in District 2. You know, after serving as a social caseworker for Boulder County and trying to keep families together in a foster care system that too often rips families apart because of time and paperwork, I decided to run for the state house to flip the script and really make sure that families could be together, we could save the state money and do the right thing for the next generation. But the truth is, it's our county that actually implements these things. And so while I'm proposing a Boulder County Green New Deal and working to make sure that our human services system works effectively, I'm also running on a record where I passed over 100 bills to make sure that we could decarcerate our jails, improve our criminal justice system, and make sure that Boulder County, whether you're a business owner or a worker or a landlord or a tenant, has a place here in our community. It hit home with me, especially after my rent was doubled just last year or 2 years ago now. And I want to be a voice for every single Boulder County resident and bring that same message that I had at the state capitol to the county commission. Thanks again.
Thank you, Jonathan. And now we are moving into the issue questions. The first one will be posed by my colleague, Maya Cordero. So Maya, take it away.
Good afternoon. I'll be asking the first issue question to Cinda Kochen. Hi, Cinda. Let's talk about land and use development. What land use, housing, and transportation policies and programs do you support for addressing issues impacting our workforce, such as the lack of housing options and traffic congestion?
I think we need to look at a lot of solutions out there in terms of new solutions. We've had old ones proposed, we've heard them again and again, read them in the paper. They are divisive, and I think one of the big land use things that I would love to see is, really reaching out to some of our private developers, architects, and getting them really involved with some creative solutions. I believe there's answers. I don't believe we have to build up. I don't believe we have to have people drive, 60 miles to get to work. So I really would like to employ the private sector in coming up with that, as well as transportation issues. I think that we have a lot of opportunity for using shuttles, van pools, all kinds of things that we've not really worked out very well. I also believe that we have to be careful in this period of time not to raise taxes too quickly on people and shut out the people we want to include. Thank you.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you, Cinda. The next question goes to Clare Levy. Clare, this question is about the cost of living and the cost of doing business in Boulder County. Our residential and commercial property taxes in Boulder County have been rising significantly over the past several years. It's making it more expensive to live here and operate a business. While county government relies on this revenue, what are your strategies for maintaining the appropriate level of affordability while being able to provide government services?
That's obviously a great question, because I think that's something we hear a lot about. We hear a lot about the fact that property taxes are driving some of our independent businesses off of Main Street, whether it's in Lyons or Louisville or Lafayette or Boulder. A lot of it comes down to property taxes. I think the two biggest problems really are the effect of the Gallagher Amendment, which pushes up that commercial tax assessment rate, along with just the increase in property values that residential property owners are experiencing. And so as your neighbor down the street maybe builds a brand new home and you're still living in the same home you've been living in for the last 35 years, well, your property value goes up. So I think we have to find ways to address that issue, that gentrification issue, and find ways so that what your neighbor does doesn't affect you. I also do want to note quickly in the 15 seconds I have left that the county share of property tax revenues is only a little more than 25% of what the county brings in. So we have to look beyond just the county.
Thank you, Claire.
Thanks. James, this question is for you. Regarding government, what do you believe are the top responsibilities of county government, and what will you as a county commissioner do to ensure those activities and services are adequately funded in the county's annual budget?
Thank you. Great question, and one that I've thought quite a bit about. And it's priorities, right? I mean, policy should always follow priorities. And in the county of Boulder, I think our priorities over the years have slipped a bit. So I consider the first and most important priority of Boulder County government to be public safety. That's in the main our sheriff's department. The second priority is probably how well we maintain our roads and our bridges, the infrastructure that we have here, so that we can all drive to work, drive to school, go shopping, take the baby to the pediatrician, all the things that we need to do every day. I believe that those priorities have become quite skewed. In fact, a very small percentage of the county budget actually goes for those things. So I would change that. I would change that. Maybe our county has grown bloated and needs to be resized appropriately.
Thank you, James. The next question is for another District 2 candidate, and that is Marta Loachamin. Marta, this question is about transportation and housing. Before the COVID-19 pandemic hit, Boulder County leaders were exploring a ballot initiative to raise funding for transportation and affordable housing. Given our current fiscal situation, how do you propose funding these priority areas?
That's the one of the big questions, right? We had some questions around transportation and housing prior to COVID-19, and the reality is that our budget is going to be hit. We've seen it already from the state level, and it will be affected here locally. And so one of the pieces that, for me, from a county commissioner standpoint, looking really here locally, my commitment to community really is, let's look at, there are still funds that are coming out from the CARES Act that are in the works that are being planned around infrastructure. We have some projects that need to, that are already what we call shovel ready. They're ready to happen, and we've got different ones all around the county. So I like that because it's not just one centric area that will address both of those pieces around the transportation, how we can fix that. And then the housing one, with my expertise and my background from the last 20 years in assisting in housing advocacy in a lot of different roles, will be right on my target to address as well.
Thank you, Marta. Jonathan, this question is for you, and let's talk about equity and inclusive. How do you plan to ensure inclusion of underrepresented voices in decision-making, not just the wealthy and connected, but the people who increasingly feel the squeeze of increasing costs of living throughout Boulder County?
You know, I'm so grateful that you brought that question up. I mean, it's, you know, I tell people it's part of my story, but I also have to recognize my own white privilege. You know, when Longmont United Hospital sold my apartment complex and they doubled my rent, I wasn't sure where I was going to live. And as somebody who won with 67% of the vote, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to represent my own community. So I think we need to take things to another level here in Boulder County. So many other counties have an Office of Equity that requires people to sit down and create real accountability, not just checking a box, but real accountability within the system. And we need to actually look at the things that have hurt our communities of color the most. That's why I passed bills to get money out of our militarized law enforcement and put it into treatment and jobs and the critical things that everyone needs, but not everyone got. And, you know, just lastly, part of the reason I'm a little out of sorts is I just had to leave another meeting where the Black Cannabis Equity Initiative actually just recognized some of my work on that. And we need to continue fighting our war on drugs, because that is way too expensive for our community to continue to endure.
Thank you, Jonathan. And now we go back to the top of the roster, and we go back to Cinda Kochen, running in District 1. Cinda, this question is for you, and it is about workforce retention. Finding and retaining good employees is a challenge in Boulder County. How will you address this as a policymaker?
As a special ed educator for many years in Boulder Valley, we really need to engage our school district. It's an excellent school district. We've had BOTEC training, we've had a variety of things, and they have been slipping a little in the past. Just up here recently in Nederland, for example, we have put into the schools so that they don't have to drive all the way down to tech. The kids are ecstatic about that. I also think we need to do more for not just the upper echelon, the kids in college, but, you know, down all through, to retain them, to help them pay their rent, their property taxes. We have to find creative ways of doing that. And I believe they're out there. And it doesn't necessarily mean we bring in more money, bringing in money from the people that we want to give it back to. I think we can do things with employers. Employers are really needing a better workforce. Myself, you know, having a startup business, I look out there and I think,
And that's time.
who I
Cinda.
want. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cinda. Next question is for Clare. Clare, this question is in regard land use and development. Growth and development issues in Boulder County can be polarizing. What are your specific strategies for promoting civic public discourse around these issues? Please indicate what experience you have or the level of commitment you would apply to collaboration, consensus building, and joint problem solving with your colleagues to address these issues.
All of that in 60 seconds. Here we go. Well, I spent 10 years as an assistant county attorney in Jefferson County doing land use. And so a good chunk of my life has been spent already in really contentious land use hearings. So I know very well how polarizing it is. I also spent 7 years in the legislature. I chaired the Judiciary Committee where some of the most controversial bills in the legislature went. And I've chaired a number of other committees as well. And I think through all of those, all of that experience that I've had, people came away from committees that I chaired feeling that they had been heard, that they had had a fair opportunity to speak, and that the conversation was civil. I became friends with Republicans on my committee as well as Democrats, and people thanked me who had come to my committees to testify for the civil way in which I conducted it and the way in which they all felt heard. I know these decisions and these hearings are going to be difficult. They're going to be controversial. I think we model the behavior we want to see. And I think we also invest at the front end in stakeholder processes and collaboration so that hopefully we begin from a less polarized place.
Thank you, Clare. The next question goes back to the first of the District 2 candidates, and that is James Crowder. James, this question is about economic recovery. Next year's county budget will likely receive a big financial hit due to the property valuation decreases and other revenue losses as a result of COVID-19 on our economy. How do you propose addressing the anticipated financial challenges and to keep the county government functioning?
Well, actually, I question that premise. Even though COVID has had some economic impact and a few people have suffered mightily from it, property taxes will go up this year. Sales taxes probably will be unaffected because Amazon is still delivering packages. I know in Lyons, our sales taxes are actually increasing. As I mentioned, I'm on the Lyons Audit Committee. So I'm not as concerned about how much the government will have to spend as how they're going to spend it. I think that the key to economic vitality is to have a diverse workforce, and you have a diverse workforce by having affordable housing. And I believe that affordable housing can be accomplished with a less oppressive government structure. Let's upzone some things, get more density. Let's create some more land use opportunities for maybe manufactured housing.
Thank you, James.
You bet.
Next question is for Marta. Marta, this question is in regards to equity. What kinds of changes would you make to the commissioner's office and to the boards and commissions to make them more accessible for underrepresented communities?
Thank you. So the question around equity and inclusivity, there's a couple of different pieces. I do believe first and foremost that representative leadership is critical. As a previous teacher internationally and also here in St. Vrain Valley School District, that was one of the reasons that I decided to go, when we talk about public service, serve in that way, but also just go out and have candid conversations. When we have diverse leadership, it also stems diverse workforce. When we talk about recruiting, when we talk about retention, that is really a key to that. And when I talk about diversity and I talk about racial equity, it's also expanding for our Boulder County 330,000 residents, the opportunity to learn from each other And that is critical in a leadership position from the very beginning. I saw in the flood recovery really specific, the afterthought of what happens if we don't have people who represent our entire community at the beginning for programming and processing, where funds are allocated. And so that is really important to me from the role of the County Commission office.
Thank you, Marta. The last question before we go to the audience questions is for Jonathan. Jonathan, this is about leadership and achievement. Assume you're elected and assume it's November 20th, 21. What one specific thing will you have led our county through and led our county to accomplish that you would be the most proud of at that point?
Number one thing that I've been championing in Boulder County for this race is a Boulder County Green New Deal. We know our climate crisis has hit us harder than ever before, and it's only going to get worse unless we act and respond on every level of government. We need to make sure that employees and employers who are looking for jobs in the renewable energy industry get training through our workforce development centers, through skilled trades and unions. We need to make sure that we have a transit system that works for everyone, maybe through a countywide eco-pass. And we need to make sure that our frontline communities that have always traditionally been ignored have first crack at this new kind of green economy. So it's a big process. I'm inviting everyone to the table. And if I'm elected, this is what I hope to see November of next year.
Thank you, Jonathan. And next, we're going to go look to the chat and any questions that have been submitted by our audience. I am going to ask my colleague Lori Call if we have a question, and the first question we will pose to Cinda. So Lori, do we have anything coming in through the chat or any question for Cinda?
We do. Cinda, there's a question about economic development funding opportunities in East Boulder County. The funding has been considered fragile for many years. And so our colleague with the Superior Chamber is wondering what your plans are for economic vitality in East County.
I think, you know, this is a very, very great question, because I have so many people and friends in East County, and they do feel neglected, that everything centers around Boulder, and they're trying to beef up their tax bases. And I think we need to be supportive of them. We need to be supportive of their transportation needs. We need to be supportive of their training needs. You know, we don't want them driving into Boulder all the time. We need to set up some satellite facilities for training, for education, working with the businesses that they do have. I think many of these business communities in East County and other smaller areas, they're anxious to step up to the plate, and often we don't ask them enough of those questions.
Thank you, Cinda. And next we will go to Claire with another question from the audience. Lori?
Yeah, there's a question about tiny homes and thoughts around that. Claire, have you given thought to tiny homes and their role in the community?
Yes, thank you for the question. Absolutely, I have. And tiny homes, I think along with manufactured housing, I think it was James that mentioned the role of manufactured housing and affordable housing. Both of them, I think, have a very large role to play. The county actually hosts already quite a number of manufactured housing communities. And there was legislation this last session led by Representative Edie Hooten that really beefed up the protections that the residents have. Tiny homes, I think, are a solution, one solution. They're not the ideal one, in my opinion, because I think we want homes that people can move into and stay in over, you know, over the course of their lives. And so they may work when you're young and when you're just, you know, you don't have children. But I think after a certain point, then you need to move on. And so we need to address the whole spectrum of housing affordability. I also think that tiny homes and development that has that degree of density really belongs in municipalities where there are city services and not so much in unincorporated parts of the county. I do support the county comp plan and its efforts to direct development into incorporated areas.
Thank you, Claire. The next one will go to James, Lori.
All right, James, this is from Rebecca Novinger, the CEO of Imagine, and she's asking, it's an organization, for those who aren't aware, that work with people with disabilities. What do you believe are the top concerns for Boulder County residents with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and what are your thoughts on resolving them?
Thank you for that question. I have many friends actually in management at Imagine and know the organization pretty well, I believe. In fact, one of my tenants works there. And I think that we all need to be more aware of and more engaged with people that have developmental disabilities. And I think the best way to do that is to rely on creating opportunities for them to be out in the communities with us. So some people are just not able to be that. Their disability is so significant. Others can function pretty well in jobs. And I think as employers, where we can offer job opportunity to people that have developmental disabilities, we do them the best service that we could possibly do. It puts them in our community and makes us more aware of their needs.
Thank you, James. And a question from the audience for Marta, Lori.
Yes, this one comes from Harry Gregory, and he's wondering, how will you engage in the Boulder Climate Mobilization Action Plan to ensure an outcome that will rapidly eliminate greenhouse gas emissions?
Great. The climate and environment or sustainability work, et cetera, is something that I'm proud to have been involved in really my whole life as an environmentalist, and then focusing that in other work around social justice and really the interconnectedness of all of these topics that we're talking about and how they really are intertwined. The good news is that in Boulder County, we have commissioners who have already paved the way. If you look on the Boulder County site, if you look at all of the different options, if you look at all the different opportunities and the way that Boulder County, who is truly nationally, we are already on the map for the work that we're doing around climate action. I've been at the commissioner's office a couple times, speaking and listening and just participating on different measures. And it's everything really from programs like trip trackers that give our youth locally opportunities to participate in reducing our GHG emissions. We have plans that are also addressing those. We have agricultural community that wants to get involved. We've got grants that have recently been supporting those measures, and that is completely on my plan to continue and broaden that scope of climate work. Thank you.
Thank you, Marta. And one more for Jonathan.
Yes, Jonathan, since legislation isn't part of the county commissioner's job, what is your experience managing people and dealing with budgets?
No, that's a great question. And, I spend so much time talking about the legislation that I worked on because I think it's impacted so many different lives. And it is really what the county is responsible for when we talk about the biggest part of the budget, which is human services. But I'll go back, and what I'll say is that one of the biggest things that I did is I was a supervisor and a manager at a childcare center. I was responsible for payroll, for scheduling, for advertising. I did this not only there, but running campaign offices for other campaigns other than my own. Once again, and making payroll and meeting those goals is so critical, not just in small businesses, but at a county government level. What I've been doing since I've been a legislature is actually going back to the county and talking to county employees outside of prying eyes to get an idea of what frontline issues we could address. And frankly, this is a policy job too. And we need to know that you can't manage a bad policy. And I'm going to keep putting forward good policies that we can manage well.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. So at this point, we got here a lot quicker than we thought we would, and everybody has answered the questions very efficiently, very effectively. So we are going to reward each one of our candidates with actually a closing statement of 2 minutes each, or up to 2 minutes, to really let us know as a county commissioner, what legacy will you leave? What is the mark you're trying to make on an impact on our county? And we'll start at the top with Cinda Kochen running in District 1. And Cinda, you have up to 2 minutes for closing statement, anything you didn't get a chance to address.
Okay. You know, I look back and it's not just the county commissioners that I'm seeing in this, I'm seeing my life. And as I was thinking about what my legacy would be, it's like, well, it's what I've been doing my entire life. I've been doing equity my entire life, not knowing that word at the time. I really would like my legacy to see that we have brought in all parts of this county. We've recognized the natural resource that we have. I see, you know, in the question James had about disabilities, I've worked with disabilities my entire life. I've seen the numbers of things these people can do and joining with the businesses who utilize their labors and who make them feel good. You see them around town. The equity of different racial backgrounds. A couple of years ago, I went to the Texas International Hair Show with a Black friend of mine, and he and I traveled through Texas, and I have to say I was a little concerned, you know, a white woman and a Black guy traveling through Texas. We had no problem. We had a great time. All of these diverse peoples that we have in our community need to be utilized, and I want to reach out. I want to identify all of these underserved populations, bring them to the table. They won't come by themselves. You have to go out, you have to find them, you have to make them comfortable where you are. You got to get out of the courthouse. You got to go out to these little communities. You invite them. You find people in the communities who will invite them and mentor them. So my legacy would be to see all the peoples, all the cultures, all the races, all the little towns in this county brought together and united, learning how to solve their problems, whether you use conflict resolution, which I have in my background. That would be my legacy. I would love to see that happen.
Thank you, Cinda. Next question is for Clare. Clare, same question. As the Boulder County Commissioner, what legacy will you seek to leave?
Well, thank you. And as we close, I really have enjoyed hearing the thoughts of my fellow candidates and look forward to more opportunities to hear from them. I think primarily, so there are a lot of parts to that question, but really primarily it goes back to something I think both James and Cinda addressed, which is, and Marta as well, which is that you know, I really hope that at the end of my tenure as a county commissioner, that people throughout the county really feel like I listened to them and that all voices were heard. You know, I'm very well aware that I am a straight white female and I live in the city of Boulder. But I don't want that to be how people see me. I want people to have seen me as a person who made the trip up to the mountains to listen to mountain residents, which I've been doing for many years already. But that I listened to people of color, that I listened to people in the eastern part of Boulder County, that I did not just represent the city and the demographic that I happen to be a part of. And so I think for first and foremost, and maybe above all, is that regardless of the decisions that I make, that people feel like they were well informed, that I listened, and that they were sound. They may not always agree with me, but I want them to have confidence. I think more specifically then, you know, we have the time that is rapidly leaving where we can actually address climate change. We're running out of time. And so I hope that people see that I have addressed that with the urgency that it deserves, that we have brought everything to the table that we possibly can to reverse climate change, and that we've done it in a responsible way. I would like to continue my work on criminal justice reform as a county commissioner and address the community justice services that we have, so that we don't put so many people in jail, that we fund our diversion programs, and that we have a more equitable, inclusive, and diverse county.
Thank you, Claire. And now, James, what is the legacy you're looking to leave as a county commissioner?
Well, thanks. I'm really happy that God gave us both a heart and a brain. I mean, our hearts catch on fire with causes and they lead us to action, but not always the best action. And that's why we have a brain. And I think it's important for us when we're in a policy setting decision to use our rational mind to think about these things, realize that we don't have unlimited resources, and set priorities. And those priorities should flow from the people that we serve up to us. I don't think in any way would I want to leave my first year thinking that I've dictated to people in Boulder County. I'd rather it be the other way. I'd rather people tell me what their priorities are, and I view my role as a servant to do what I can in county government to husband, to shepherd, and to steward the resources that our citizens have trusted us with. And if I can reduce property taxes, if I can increase housing affordability, if I can make our community a more vital community by doing different things, trying different things, maybe reducing the footprint of government so that private enterprise can more prosper, that would be my legacy if I had any way to wave that magic wand and make it happen.
Thank you, James. Marta, same question for you. As a Boulder County Commissioner, what legacy will you seek to leave?
Thanks for the question. This is an exciting question because I agree with Cinda, and especially for women, I feel like our lives, our path looks like this. And for me, I look back and now realize that maybe getting my master's and teaching wasn't just about being in the classroom. It was about learning how to navigate a system and looking at really what community needs were by working with families and administrations and just the actual seeing of inequities in a system, but then being there on the ground to create institutionalized change. And so my legacy from looking at what I never knew for sure it would be running for office, but to now be able to utilize these skills with my background in banking and in finance, in mortgage, in real estate, as a teacher and a consultant around family engagement and community engagement. Those are all pieces that then I didn't realize how aligned they are with the real administrative leadership and governance role as a county commissioner. And to be able to do that, a legacy for me is using all that and showing community members that we can also, as people who are just from community, be part of the leadership circle to support our 2,000 Boulder County employees. And for me to be able to use my previous board work, community boards, health boards, around housing boards to also lead and give our Boulder County employees the best employee, like actual circumstances and scenarios so that they can then provide amazing service to the other 330,000 residents in our county. To do that, for me, is a legacy. And it would be remiss when my fellow candidates are talking about racial equity and these other pieces to not make sure that our voters understand that we have never had a person of color in Boulder County in this commissioner's office. And to also make sure, since this is our chamber speaking, that my self-employment perspective, when we talk about what employment really will look like and needs to look like after COVID-19 and in our rebuild, is a really unique perspective that I'm excited to use.
Thank you, Marta. And Jonathan, what kind of legacy would you seek to leave as a Boulder County Commissioner?
Hopefully one where I'm unmuted. So first of all, thank you to everybody here. I certainly appreciate all of the perspectives and ideas that were put out here. And I tell people, if you start thinking about legacy, that's when you get off your game. I'm not thinking about creating a legacy. What I'm working on is what I've worked on my entire life, which is supporting families at risk and in crisis to be able to get out of those crises and thrive. That's why I'm supported by groups like the Sierra Club, the St. Vrain Teachers Association, as well as people like Congressman Jonah Goose and the mayors of Boulder, Longmont, and Nederland. And my hope is that you know, in 4 or 8 years, Boulder County will become a place where everyone can afford a place to live. We will have real mass transit between our neighborhoods and our communities. We will have real criminal justice reform that will save our budget, but also invest in the lives of people that should have never been caught up in a system that incarcerates people before we treat things as a medical issue. Those are all things that our county can do. And I know that not every county commissioner has agreed with some of the policies that I put forward at the state level. But we worked together and we found compromises, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you, because as probably one of the most left-wing members of the state legislature, I'm also received awards from the Colorado Restaurant Association for being able to find business efficiencies and push those forward in the state. So Andrea, your bandana is just going to show up in my dreams from now on. But I just want to, the one promise I'll make is, win or lose, I'll keep coming back to the chamber, and we'll keep coming, hopefully coming up with really great conversations.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. And yeah, I hope we do show up in your dreams. That's something the chamber would like. And we have enough time to actually take one more question. Lori let me know that a question came in from the Latino Chamber that we'd like to ask all candidates as a final question. And for this, we ask for 1 minute response. So Lori, what is the question that has come in through the chat?
Yeah, so special thanks to Pete Salas from the Latino Chamber. He makes the observation that most of the leadership at the county is white, and is asking what plans our candidates have to address this.
Let's start with Cinda. Cinda, 1 minute.
Okay, I think my main way of doing this is really, we've got to get out of that courthouse. Many of these minorities, they won't come up on their own. They want to, they're full of ideas. They're what we need. They're a natural resource, but they're not going to come down on the Pearl Street Mall, park in a parking structure. We have got to go to them. We have got to find the natural leaders. We do have natural leaders in that community. Go to Pete Salas, go to other members and say, hey, can you recommend somebody to come to this meeting? And we want to just see what your concerns are. Start there at a very general level and keep meeting and have minority members of the chamber who can mentor them and bring them into the fold and build their leadership capabilities.
Thank you, Cinda. Claire, same question.
Yeah, thank you. And first, let me say amen to what Cinda said about getting out of the courthouse and going to where people are. I think that's really important. But specifically about department heads, I think we need to look at the way we recruit our leadership at the county. I think we tend to go to the same well. And I think we need to take a totally different approach. And I think when we are trying to fill top roles in leadership, like we have one open right now with Frank Alexander leaving, I think we need to tailor our search process specifically to find non-traditional candidates. I think we also need to revise our hiring criteria and the kinds of minimum qualifications we have to make sure that we're not excluding people because we're arbitrarily requiring a particular degree or a certain number of years experience in a field where many other kinds of experience might be really, really helpful instead. So I think we need to broaden our scope. I think we need to be much more creative in the kinds of candidates that we're looking for. And I think we need to be open to accepting all different paths towards leadership and not just the traditional one of coming up through the ranks.
Thank you, Claire. And James, you are next. 1 minute. If you need to hear the question again, let us know. If not, what do you think?
Yeah, please repeat it. I want to be sure I focus on the question. And I was listening so intently to the other panelists here, I'm not sure I stuck with the question.
Sure. So the observation was made that many members of the leadership of Boulder County are white. How do you plan to address this?
That's a great question. You know, the Civil Rights Act in the United States passed in 1957. There have been a number of amendments since then. It's basically been illegal in this country to discriminate on the basis of the 5 constitutional classes, and most recently with the Supreme Court decision, even sexual identification issues in terms of employment, housing, or lending decisions. Have we as a community completely got that into our hearts in a way that we act out every day to ensure that we're not blinded by some bias that prevents us from seeing that this person would be qualified for a job? Absolutely. Bias is central to all of us. None of us escape bias. What I would say beyond that is that I agree with Clare that we don't need to make our qualifications for a particular job so rigorous. But my God, if we need a civil engineer, we need somebody with an engineering degree. And if the only people that happen to step up are white people like me with those engineering degrees, we still need an engineer. In cases where we don't need a particular degree, or we don't need a skill set that maybe would be defined in a typical job description, yeah, let's relax those. Let's then actively get out in the community and recruit people of color and let them know that in spite of what they might have seen on TV, we welcome their participation in our government.
Thanks, James. And next to answer that, Marta.
That's a super important question for us, specifically in Boulder County. And there's a couple pieces on the response. There is, from my experience on different boards, both here locally and nationally around housing and health and just community, working as a facilitator, specifically on a human-centered design project for Community Foundation Boulder County over the last 2 years. There are 3 different pieces that we need to be looking at, and I'm thinking about the commissioner role specifically, and one of them is recruitment that fellow candidates have talked about that needs to look different, and yes, absolutely get out of the courthouse building. It's also about retention, and from a management perspective and working with other employees for significant companies, is what does that recruitment process look like? So when I finally get the candidate that was really going to diversify my workforce, how am I bringing them in and doing that in a successful way? And I talk about this a lot. I do entrepreneurial work. I've been a mentor at Stanford, the SLAY program, been a mentor for Front Range Community College. And so part of that question is, how do we make sure that that experience is something that people are going to hold on to? And the other one is reward. And I've done a lot of work around cultural brokers and was part of the force in that conversation to eliminate those bachelor degree requirements for the 81 positions that happened here locally for Boulder County. And so there's a lot of different tiers, but I also know that specifically my experience as a woman of color here in Boulder County will help lead that building of a pipeline of a diverse workforce.
Thank you, Marta. And Jonathan, just let us know if you need the question again, and if not, let us know what you see.
Well, I have to say, I agree with a lot of the comments that were made, but we need to build on that too. I think that one of the things we did at the state is we created a procurement investigation to see who are we signing contracts with and making sure that that happens. And I always say that change begins at home. If you look at my campaign team, we put together some of the best, smartest, and brightest and most inspired people to work together. They are of all ages, all ethnicities, and they've worked together to put together where we are today. And I'm really excited about that. And last but not least, as a frontline caseworker who worked for the county, I saw our bilingual caseworkers get hit by even a harder glass ceiling than any other monolingual caseworker. And it's because their Spanish-speaking skills were so vital, and so we wouldn't promote them. And so we need to talk about why people should be promoted and what skills they bring to the table. And that really starts by talking to people on the front lines about what they're experiencing, and then bringing in smart third-party organizations to evaluate and make sure we're reaching our goals.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you to all the candidates. Thank you to everybody that submitted questions from the audience. We had over 90 people registered today. As I was looking, we've had up to 80 some folks participating on this at the peak times. So thank you to all our members. I will turn it over to Lori Call at this point for closing comments and to take us out of here.
Thank you, Andrea, and thanks to you and Maya for those thoughtful questions. Thank you, Claire, Cinda, James, Marta, and Jonathan for taking time with us this afternoon. We're grateful for your participation in this important discussion. Public service is admirable work. It's challenging, frustrating, and incredibly rewarding. We so appreciate your interest in serving our community. To our audience, thank you for joining us. We hope you now feel better prepared to vote for our county commissioners. As follow-up from today, the Boulder Chamber will have resources posted on our website, boulderchamber.com/advocacy. These will include a candidate scorecard, including answers to some of the issues raised this afternoon, contact information for each of the candidates as well as their website, and a video recording of this event on our Boulder Chamber YouTube channel. As we wrap up, the Boulder Chamber wants to note that amidst COVID-19, business is happening safely. So leveraging the county health guidelines, please do support your local businesses that are struggling now and do so safely, wearing face coverings and keeping socially distant. And finally, make sure to vote. Thanks very much.